Oh, it's you. Welcome back, my Yetiling. Please, come in, come in. Yes, I've got some fresh hot chocolate for you. Please, grab some and come join me over here by the fire. Tonight, I have some more Reddit stories for you, so kick back and enjoy. It was 2011, and I was married to someone in law enforcement. Unbeknownst to me, there was a known threat that was breaking into houses he knew to be cops that had done him wrong. He would ride around town on his bike and would come across one of their homes and mark it for a break-in later. It was 5:30 to 6 a.m. one morning, and my then husband called me to ask me where I was. I told him I was in bed. And I quote, "It's the butt crack of dawn, the kids are in bed. Where else would I be?" He said, "No, really, where are you?" I told him, "No, really, I'm in bed. Where are you?" "I'm on the corner by the house, and your car isn't there." I jumped out of bed and ran to the driveway right as my husband pulled up. We both stood in the driveway looking up and down the street like it was going to magically appear. I suddenly looked down and realized that there was no glass in the driveway. "The kids!" We ran into the house, and I went to my son's bedroom, and he went to my daughter's. I laid hands on him, and the next thing I knew, my husband was picking me up off the floor. They were both okay and safe. But as we walked around the house, we found that he had crawled through the doggy door in the back and helped himself to my purse, where he got the keys to the car. He picked up camera equipment that was my husband's used for his side business, some medication, a laptop, and other various items. He then left out the back door, leaving a bottle of my husband's medication on the fence, letting us know that he knows who we are. Apparently, my dogs never barked, and if he came to our bedrooms, we never woke up. The whole thing was incredibly terrifying. A week later, we got a phone call saying that they found my car banged up. It was a couple of towns away in a parking lot at a grocery store. They had located him and his baby mama in a hotel with a key to my car in the trash can of their room. At the trial, he kept turning to me in the gallery, calling me names and saying lewd things. He has now been in jail for 13 years of his 17-year-long sentence. He was on parole when he did all of this. I still get a call every 2 years when his new parole hearing comes up, and every 2 years I tell them this story. I hope he will remain locked up for a very long time, as he was escalating to sex crimes at the time they finally were able to stop him. We picked up a boy that was running for his life, and my parents don't remember it. I was about 6 years old the night that this happened. It was the mid-90s, and my siblings and I were playing outside, waiting for our parents to come out so we could leave for dinner. Our house sat in a quiet cul-de-sac near a viaduct in La Crosse, Wisconsin. The kind of bridge that looked normal enough during the day, but turned eerie at night under those dim, flickering orange streetlights. The train tracks ran beneath it, stretching into the dark, and I remember always seeing dead crows scattered along the rails, like something had been killing them on purpose. Then, out of nowhere, a boy, maybe 12, came sprinting towards us. He was panting, wide-eyed, his face streaked with sweat and something else. Dirt, maybe, or blood. He's coming! He has a knife! I froze. Even at 6, I knew real fear when I saw it, and my siblings did too. We ran inside, yelling for our parents. I don't remember the conversation that followed, just that somehow my parents agreed to drive him to where he said his older brother worked, a factory along the Mississippi River. The whole drive there, he barely spoke. I remember watching him in the rearview mirror, The way he kept looking over his shoulder like someone was still chasing him. I never saw anyone. No shadow lurking near the bridge, no movement in the trees. But I still felt it. The factory was nearly pitch black when we pulled up, the only light coming from a single flickering bulb near the entrance. The place looked abandoned, but the boy pointed ahead. His voice, the first steady thing he said all night. "He's here." I squinted through the windshield, trying to see what he was looking at, but there was no one. Just a shadow stretching along the side of the building, cast long and distorted like someone was standing just beyond the light. The boy didn't hesitate. He opened the door and stepped out, barely saying a word. I wanted to ask, was that really his brother? Did he feel safe? But before I could, he was already walking towards the darkened building, vanishing into the night. We drove away in silence. I asked my parents about it recently, curious if they remembered anything, how they felt, why they agreed to take him. They didn't remember. Not the boy, not the knife, not the factory. And that's the part that scares me the most. La Crosse has its share of dark stories. A few of the smiley-face killer victims were found here, young men who disappeared under strange circumstances, only to be found drowned days later. People say something lurks near that river, something that takes people and leaves no trace. And La Crosse was once home to someone else, Ed Gein, the real-life inspiration for Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the man who made furniture out of human skin. He lived just outside the city before his crimes were uncovered in the 50s. I can't stop thinking about that night, because if my parents don't remember, then who exactly did we bring to that factory? And who, or what, was waiting for him? I thought maybe I had imagined it, that it was some strange childhood nightmare that had woven itself into my memories over time. But then I asked my older brother, and he remembers everything. The boy, the knife, the factory, the shadow waiting in the dark. And here's the part that makes my stomach turn. Not long after that night, I remember hearing about some kids found murdered in La Crosse. I was too young to understand the details, but I knew enough to feel the weight of it. And I've always wondered, was that boy one of them? Or did we drop him off with the person who did it? So, to start this story, I'm originally from Wales in the UK, but I moved to France during my childhood, and we settled in the south. This didn't stop us from moving around often, though, and during my childhood, I lived in numerous different places in the south of France. This story takes place right after we moved to a new town, 2 hours away from my previous home. As soon as we moved, me and my friends decided to go on a camping trip in the forest, 30 minutes into the countryside outside of town. I'd like to preface the story by admitting that I wasn't completely in the right. In fact, on numerous occasions, I did tend to poke the bear. So, we walked 2 hours into the countryside through the forests in the humid summer heat of the south of France. We set up our tents, drank beer, and had a nice evening as a whole. However, around 2 in the morning, we started to get bored and decided to go on a walk through the forest. Not all of us were completely happy with this, but those who didn't want to go also didn't want to be left alone. So we all began our walk through the forest. The walk was nice. We talked, laughed. Some of us were mildly tipsy, but nothing crazy. And we kept up the pace quite well. After 20 minutes of walking, we came to a clearing and came out into a small village. Those of my friends who knew the area well knew this village was here, but no one expected us to find it so soon. So we were all excited. Given that we were bored, the little village of no more than 30 houses was going to give us something to do. We were all 14, 15, so, extremely immature and huge idiots. We started trying to pull up road signs out of the ground, hoping to take one back to the campsite. Then we moved on to the village primary school, where we jumped the fence and opened the door to a little shed in the playground. This is where we found little bikes, and we decided it would be a great idea to push each other downhill on these bikes. We planned on returning these bikes, obviously, and we're just having as much fun as possible. As we were putting the bikes back, that's when she appeared. I say she, but it was impossible to know the gender of this person at first, given the pitch black and crappy streetlights. The person exited their front door with a small dog. Now, you could imagine that the person was simply walking their dog, but at 3:30 in the morning, this seemed a little unbelievable. We all watched as the person walked, extremely slow and straight in our direction. The person didn't speak a word, but just wandered slowly towards us, with the dog at their feet. We were all a little creeped out, but also curious. You should remember that we stood directly in front of the primary school, so this person has no other reason than to be walking in this direction unless it's to come towards us. As the figure gets closer, my friends lose their nerve and one by one run away. But I, needing to be the last one standing, continue standing there until the person is within 6 feet from me. I still can't see the person's face as they have their hood up, but I too lose my nerve and turn and run. Now, I can't help wondering what would have happened if I'd stood still. She wasn't looking at me, didn't seem to have any intention of stopping, and had nothing to say. Now, if the story ended here, it would simply be creepy. But nothing. However, the worst is very much yet to come. After running away, we continued to tour the village, being idiots, running around, until we come down a street leading us straight towards the creepy person's house, from a different direction than the primary school. Now, any mature human being would simply walk away and stay far away from this house. But, being the idiotic teenage boys we were, we dared each other to knock. We played rock, paper, scissors, and of course, I lost. I approached the door slowly, knocked gently, and bolted down the street. Nothing. After 5 minutes of hiding and giggling, no reaction. So, we engaged in another round of rock, paper, scissors, and lo and behold, I lost again. So, I approached the door for a second time, my heart beating a little faster than before, my hands shaking a little bit more than the first time. I knock a little harder this time, and with a tinge of fear that runs down my neck, I turn and bolted down the street. Realizing this would surely be enough to wake someone up, my friends exit their hiding places, and we bolt down the village's main street towards the village's exit. However, this road was long and wide, and we remained in view of the house as we were running away. This is when I turned, and there she was, stood directly under the lamppost outside her house, staring directly at us, saying nothing. We were about 50 feet away at this point, so all I could make out was her gray hair. Realizing we'd been caught, we ran even faster, until we were nearing the right turn onto the main road that led out of the village. But as we neared the turn, we slowed, just to see what she was doing. She slowly turned and at a speed we hadn't yet seen her move, and didn't even realize she was capable of moving given the speed that she was moving at earlier, she bolted back into her house. This made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I would have never expected this little old lady to move at that speed, but what she did next still terrifies me to this day. She comes running out of her house towards a small car that sat in front of it, and I can just barely make out the outline of something. A hunter's rifle. Now, gun laws in France are tight, but hunting is the exception, and in these parts of the southern countryside, almost everyone owned one. At this point, I understood what was about to happen, and I saw her open her car door and get in. I screamed to my friends who had already made the turn to run. At first, they didn't understand, but when they heard the faint sound of the car starting, I watched all of their faces drop. We ran like we'd never run before down that main road, with houses and front gardens on the left and huge, dense bushes on the right. We all ran to the left, jumped the fence of a house, and lay down on the ground. Saved. Or were we? The second we laid, a man on his way to his early job came out of the front door. He looks us up and down and shouted at us to get out. So, we did. Back onto the road. And when we turned out of the garden to keep running, we came to the realization it was the last lamppost and the last house. As we looked down the street, two huge dense bushes enveloped each side of the road, and it led into the pitch black of nothingness. No houses, no lights, no building, just road. There was no escape, and that's when we heard it, the faint rumble of a car engine. I'd always thought that fight or flight and adrenaline was exaggerated in stories like these, until that moment. Everything slowed down. I didn't move. I didn't even remember how to move. As all of my friends rushed to the right side of the road, throwing themselves desperately into the bush to try and break through, I stayed frozen. That is, until I saw the headlights of the car turning in the distance. It struck me into action, and as my friends tried desperately to hide on the right, I made the terrified decision to try the left. I could feel the car getting closer, and it was still pitch black. I felt around the bush, the adrenaline taking control, hoping desperately that I would find a way through. And that's when I felt it. A cold metal bar. A fence bar. I grabbed it and launched myself over the fence, off of the road, and onto the ground below. I didn't even have time to roll away from the fence when the car stopped. She'd seen my friends on the right, breaking through the bush, and luckily, they'd just about managed to. She got out of the car, headlights off, and suddenly, everything was pitch black. However, she was so preoccupied with my friends she couldn't see me, inches away from her legs on the other side of the fence. My breathing ceased. I lay there, terrified that she'd turn around, but she didn't. What she did was far more terrifying. She lifted the gun and fired a warning shot. The sound was deafening, and I genuinely thought I was going to die. But that wasn't the worst of it. What happened next still haunts me to this day. She looked up to the sky and screamed. Not an angry shout or an insult. She just full-on screamed for 30 seconds. As my heart skipped numerous beats, I could touch her. I was within touching distance of her. Her screaming was almost superhuman, one of those terrifying, psychotic screams. She then flung the door open and threw herself back into the car and drove full speed away. I was paralyzed, and I was the last of my friends to build up the courage to move. Hell, I never thought I'd move again, until I felt them pull me up from the other side of the gate. That was not it for us, and as we walked back along the road, terrified we'd see that car again, none of us spoke. None of us could speak. We learned the next day that one of my friends never made it through the bush, and that he was lying in a ditch on the side of the road, and that if she hadn't been on the side of the car that she would have been looking straight at him. It's safe to say that I never ding-dong ditched again. And to that old woman, please, never come near me again. Thank you so much for joining me in the cave tonight. I hope you enjoyed tonight's stories. I know I did. And again, huge shout out to Let's Read for letting me use his Reddit until I can get some stories on mine. I hope you enjoyed tonight's stories once again. Don't forget to finish your hot chocolate and have a good night.